former inmate, aspiring musician, and charismatic cult leader is the subject of today's comic. I'm Sergeant Horror, and today we're going to explore the life of Charles Manson. Comic Zone's Psycho Killers issue 1 was released in 1991. Each of these comics featured the life story of a serial killer except for issue 1. Even though Manson was convicted of first-degree murder, he never physically murdered anyone. The story begins with this drawing of Manson. They describe the atmosphere of the 1960s. It was a time where many Americans resented authority. Timothy Leary preached, "Turn on, tune in, drop out." The counterculture preached peace, love, anarchy, and revolution. And then you had Charles Manson. Charles Manson was born on November 12, 1934, as No Name Maddox. His mother was a 16-year-old unmarried prostitute. The actual identity of his father was a mystery. Manson's mother eventually married William Manson, who adopted the boy, who then became Charles Miles Manson. His mother would often disappear for days or weeks at a time. In 1939, Charles' mom was sentenced to 5 years in prison for armed robbery. In 1947, Manson was sent to a caretaking institute for boys. 11 months later, Manson escaped. He was caught during an attempted burglary. The court thought Manson was Catholic and sent him to Boys Town, and eventually he ended up in an Indiana reform school. Over the next 3 years, he ran away 18 times, and when he was 16 years old, Manson stole a car and robbed a gas station. He was caught and sent to prison. In January 1952, Manson homosexually raped a 13-year-old inmate. Less than a month later, his parole hearing was denied. In 1954, Manson was 19 and free. A year later, he married a waitress, Rosaline Jean Willis. He made a living working odd jobs and by stealing cars. Rosaline traveled to California with him in a stolen car. He was arrested less than 3 months later for transporting stolen cars across state line and sentenced to prison. While in prison, Manson studied Dale Carnegie. In 1958, he was released. His wife had divorced him and took custody of their son, Charles Jr. Manson became a pimp. In 1959, he was arrested for trying to cash a forged U.S. Treasury check. A woman named Leona Ray told the judge that she was pregnant with Manson's child and that they were going to get married. The judge found Manson guilty but gave him a 10-year suspended sentence. Manson married Leona Ray. Manson was caught running girls into Texas. He was sent back to California to serve his original 10-year sentence. In prison, Manson studied Scientology, Dianetics, and any books on psychology that he could find. In 1964, Manson first heard of the Beatles and became obsessed with wanting to become a musician himself. He learned to play the guitar from the last surviving member of the Ma Barker gang. Manson was about to be released from prison. He begged to stay because he didn't think he could adjust to the outside world. He was 32 years old, and he had spent more than half of his life in prison. Upon release, Manson ended up in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. He met Mary Brunner, a 23-year-old librarian, and Manson moved into her apartment. While there, he started recruiting other girls to live with them, and at one point he had over 17 girls living in their small apartment. And this was the beginning of the family. Manson started recruiting followers by preaching his own philosophy made up from a combination of Dale Carnegie, L. Ron Hubbard, jailhouse mind games, and pimp sweet talk. He had orgies and experimented with LSD, and for over a year he traveled with his followers before they headed to Los Angeles. Manson and his family moved in with the Beach Boys' Dennis Wilson. The Beach Boys would go on to record a song written by Manson entitled "Never Learn Not to Love." Wilson introduced Manson to Terry Melcher, and the Manson family costed Wilson over $100,000 in property damage before his manager kicked him out. Spawn Movie Ranch became the new home to the Manson family. Manson had his females provide sexual favors to the ranch owner in order to gain control of the ranch. The women of the family were used to recruit more and more followers. Manson would tell his followers that he was God, Jesus, and Satan. He demanded that they obey him. He used his contacts with biker gangs to turn the ranch into an arsenal. In December 1968, the Beatles released their White Album. Manson believed the song Helter Skelter was a personal message to him. The family stole dune buggies and began exploring the deserts of Death Valley. They discovered a place called the Devil's Hole, which Manson thought was some sort of Indian promised land for his family. Manson had heard the Black Panthers talk of their revolution when he was in prison. He had read the Bible, the book of Revelations, which foretold the end of the world. He knew he would be the chosen one because the Beatles told him in their song Helter Skelter. Manson thought the Beatles were the four angels from the book of Revelation. He believed their music was the prophecy that signaled the end of the world. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. The fifth angel was Charles Manson, and the Devil's Hole was their bottomless pit. Manson believed a race war was coming and that all whites would be dead except for him. He believed blacks would turn to him for leadership. Manson had his family trained in martial arts, and he had them break into houses. Manson even shot a drug dealer, but the dealer survived. In July 1969, Manson and several family members went to the home of Gary Hinman, a music teacher. They demanded money. When Gary refused, they cut off his ear. Manson left the home while family members searched for $20,000 that they thought was hidden. When they couldn't find any money, they killed him. The family members wrote "Political Piggy" and a cat's paw in blood on the wall. On August 8, 1969, Manson sent Tex Watson, Patricia, Linda, and Susan Atkins to Terry Melcher's old house. Film director Roman Polanski currently rented the home. As they entered the driveway, they saw 18-year-old Stephen Parent. Tex Watson shot him 4 times. They made their way into the house, and Tex Watson proclaimed, "I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business. Give me all of your money." Sharon Tate, the pregnant wife of Roman Polanski, and her friends Abigail Folger and Jay Sebring were in the house. Watson shot Sebring after he protested their treatment of Sharon Tate. Abigail Folger tried to escape, but she was murdered. Sharon Tate begged for her life and the life of her unborn child. The Manson family showed no mercy. Sharon Tate was brutally murdered. They wrote the word "pig" on the wall in Sharon Tate's blood. They thought it would inspire the blacks into uprising, and Manson was proud of their work. It was time for another target, he decided. Manson went into the house and tied up grocery store owner Lena LeBlancia. Manson told his family to go inside the house and paint a picture more gruesome than anybody has ever seen. Tex Watson carved the word "war" into Lena's stomach. The words "death to all pigs" and "Helter Skelter" was written in blood on the walls. In August 1969, law enforcement raided the Spahn Ranch. The Manson family was arrested, but no one suspected the families was involved in the murders, so they were arrested for car theft. Manson was charged with burglary and possession of stolen credit cards. 72 hours later, the family was released. Back at the ranch, Manson allegedly beheaded a suspected snitch with a sword, but this was never proven. Manson was now paranoid, and his family members were scared that anyone could be next. Manson relocated the family headquarters to Barker Ranch. The police raided the ranch to gather evidence to connect them to the murders. On October 12, 1969, Manson was captured by park rangers. By December, much of the family was in custody and formally charged with the Tate LeBlancia murders. At first, Manson was embraced by the counterculture as some kind of hippie martyr. But in October of 1970, Manson was removed from the courtroom for trying to attack a judge. Manson tried his best to get a mistrial declared. He even took the stand on his own behalf. On November 30th, 1970, Ronald Hughes, Manson's attorney, was absent in court. He was never heard from again, and from that point on, Manson acted as his own attorney. On March 29th, 1971, Manson was convicted. It was discovered that Manson had created a celebrity hit list. On the list were singers Tom Jones, Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Burton. The family had also planned to kill Frank Sinatra by skinning him alive while playing his records. Manson's followers tried to rob a gun shop. They wanted to get enough weapons to hijack a 747, during which they would kill one passenger every hour until Manson was freed. Everyone was captured after a long gun battle with police. During his time in prison, Manson would give occasional interviews. In 1975, one of Manson's followers tried to shoot President Gerald Ford. In 1985, Manson was attacked by another inmate who set him on fire. Manson's scalp, face, neck, and shoulder and left arm burnt for over 45 seconds. Manson was never paroled from prison. He died in November 2017. He was 83 years old and spent over 4 decades in prison. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The next issue of Psycho Killers Comics is The Son of Sam. Leave us a comment and let us know who your favorite serial killer is. I appreciate you listening. This is Sergeant Horror for Mad Monster out.